This is Andrea with Parking Lot Debrief. Hello, everyone. This podcast aims to bring those post-assignment stand in the parking lot debrief discussions to the community at large. It's a collection of conversations with experts, colleagues, regular old interpreters, and friends in the field and other stakeholders to share resources and just talk about the work. This is for interpreters, by interpreters, to do better for ourselves so we can do better work for the communities we work with. So I wanted to do this intro episode just to introduce who I am and the purpose of this whole project that I've taken on. So we'll start with the who. I am Andrea Rakoff, master's degree, nationally certified, BEI master, and I've been interpreting since 2007. I've been a mentor majority of those years, and I've officially taught for only the last handful of 5 years or so. I've lived in 3 different states and have worked in multiple communities, at conferences. I've traveled the U.S., provided workshops, worked in different areas. So as we all say, with freelance, wherever people are doing stuff, we're there interpreting, and I've been there. So that's who I am, and I will be the host. And my goal is to interview you all, interview colleagues, interview deaf people. Really, I just want to talk with people about the work. A lot of folks have been like, well, I don't know much about that, or I'm not an expert. I feel like we're all experts in our own experience, period. And that's what I want to hear is your experience. I'm not looking for perfect answers or exact research or solutions, just hoping that among these conversations, solutions will develop or more conversations will happen out there. So the who is myself and you all. I'll interview for right now my friends, because that's the only emails and phone numbers that I have within my reach. I have a decent sized network, so I'm reaching out to the people around me, and I'm extremely appreciative to the first handful who jumped on board without question, because they trusted me to take this on with their words, and we're going to put it out there. So appreciative to all my friends and people who've supported me at the start of this venture. Because we've all stood after our job in the parking lot and had these conversations. So I'm going to need to tap into your networks as well. I want all points of view, and I'll be relying on colleagues among colleagues to just bring more people in. So that's the who. The what. What is this podcast all about? As I said, I want to interview colleagues, to have conversations about things we all have conversations about, but hopefully we can maybe push the needle on some of these topics. And at this point, I have like 75 topics on a spreadsheet written out. And so I want to share a few of the episodes that I actually have recorded. And so here's a few snippets of different things and different ideas that I want to talk about. So I had the honor of talking with Don Miller. He's a CDI and one of many who I hope to chat with. And I just talked with him about the work. And it's like, I notice when I talk with CDIs and DIs, just even, or even as a deaf person, you guys understand the role of interpreters than just like the regular everyday deaf person.
You're right. I admit when I became certified, beyond that point, my hat really went off to hearing interpreters, because prior to that, I was kind of mean
You were
to
mean?
hearing interpreters. I was like, come on, why can't you do this?
Oh,
Get it right. I mean, what's it all about, right? But until I tasted that process for myself, it really gave me a sense of the work involved. That it's not just, facilitating between two languages, but, the tone, the emotion, the language itself, not to mention all of the elements that are happening beneath the surface of that facilitated communication brought me to a respect for interpreters, the interpreting field in general, and the work that we all do.
I talk with a few people about interpreting for deaf professionals in high stress situations. I want to interview folks about interpreting in healthcare or trilingual interpreters, or theater/performance interpreting. I want to talk with recent graduates to ask them what their ITP experience was like. Codas. Uh, I talked with April about being an instructor within an ITP and that balance of ensuring that students know the seriousness of the work that they're stepping into.
There's that you have to have grace, you have to take care of yourself, you have to be forgiving, all these things, but also you need to understand the gravity of the role that you will have when you are an
Yes.
interpreter in someone's life.
Also, I want to talk to the students in the ITPs. What's going on there? How are you feeling? What could change? I want to talk with agencies, multiple agencies, so we can, I don't know, clear up some stuff of what we don't know what's going on over there and they know what's going on over here with interpreters. I talked with Cameo about the status of our field. She did a whole research project on, are we a true profession? Is there an actual interpreter shortage, as you'll see here?
We have had a shortage since the field began. When
I imagine we all feel that just always was just not enough to fill the jobs. But post COVID, I imagine we're feeling it more.
Well, we're either, so who's to
Yes.
say? We're either
Right.
feeling it more or it's more apparent.
I want to talk about interpreter pay. Always a hot topic. I also talked with Keisha Osborne about how we can push the interpreting field to grow.
Like the conversation that we're having right now isn't targeted at white interpreters who look like you. It's targeted at everybody. Like, yo,
Everyone.
come all. Deaf, hearing, well, come on, y'all. Let's have a broader conversation. And how do we do that? Like how do we do that in a productive way that values our work as interpreters, but also has positive impacts for the work that we're doing with deaf people?
I want to talk about virtual work, on-site work, deaf-blind interpreting, interpreting in sports, as Chaz came on and talked about. There's especially in heated moments, there's added pressure to get it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And that could be scary sometimes. And it makes perfect sense. If they're really heated about a call and I'm over here sounding like little Bo Peep,
Right. Right.
the ref's not going to take them serious. But if they're cool, calm and collected, and I'm over here
Right.
just at 100, yeah, they're going to get kicked out. And that's going to fall back on me because I didn't provide access the appropriate way.
I also want to talk with other deaf people of their experience of interpreters, and see if they have things that we need to hear. I also chat with a deaf herbalist, and her take on what could actually help interpreters.
Yeah, I mean, and you need to be healthy. You don't want to be sick. I mean, what I have here is I've got stuff for respiratory or cold or sickness. I've got different teas and whatnot. And it just really depends on the root of your stress. Often people point to stress as an external factor that's related to something like, oh, it's related to a job. It's related to, and they're pointing outward. But what people don't realize is stress, right? It manifests from inside, right? Like if your gut health is crappy, then you'll be more stressed.
So that is the who, and that is just the beginning because that list is endless and there's so much we can talk about. And I'm so excited. I would love to talk to people doing research to like get the word out so people can fill out their surveys and stuff. So that is the who. Now on to the why. And I have to start off with tipping my hat to this is, again, just what has come to my mind and what's in my orbit. I know there's so many out there, so many more out there, but I just want to give it to Turp Tapin, Peric McTizick, and Tiffany Hill for starting something. Keisha Osborne, who has a podcast, which we'll talk about that. Amanda Smith, who also has a podcast, and I speak with her as well. The other person that comes to mind, Caitlin Ramsey Wolford, who started Core Mentorship, doing something different. We've got CJ and Steve doing research about interpreter income. and so many more out there. Again, I know there's so many other programs of mentorship and things, but this is what has come to mind for me, of folks who started something and dared to step out and try something different. And I quote my husband here because he always says, I don't know where he got this quote, but if good people do not fill the void, then bad people will. And some great people have started to fill these voids of needing growth in this field, and there's so many more who have. But I don't feel like there's any bad people filling this void, but I feel like people are just not filling the void. Like we're not doing anything. And I feel like we've kind of have stayed still and kind of we're sitting still and kind of plateauing and at the status quo for years. And I'm not sure if you all noticed, or maybe you have, deaf folks are not plateauing. Deaf folks don't want the status quo. From what I'm witnessing, they are running circles around us with their language and their PhDs and their high-level degrees and the content that we have to interpret, and the various experiences that we are privileged to enter to interpret. And I feel like we're not keeping up in many ways. And the why again behind this is we've all had these conversations in parking lots. We've all stood and talked about this, and workshop format is great, but it has been the same for the last 20 years of my career. And I thought, well, why not try something different? Yeah. And other professions have podcasts. And nothing changes if nothing changes. So let's change something. In the end, my goal is not fame, fortune, or anything like that. It's literally, I just like talking about the work with people. And if you know me, Andrea, personally, then you know I have no other choice other than to live my life very vulnerably and very authentic. So in that vein, this podcast is very scary. It's a very scary venture. And if you're an interpreter or, just a human, you know how scary it is to put yourself out there. It's very vulnerable, real. It's on the internet. People are going to pass this stuff around. So I do ask that folks put themselves in my shoes when you listen, and listen with grace. And I always want to say these are just Andrea's opinions and guests' opinions. They are not the law of the land. It's just a podcast, and we're just trying to have conversations and have fun. So that is the why. And then the language use, I thought about this for years. I was too nervous to do this type of thing in the last 3 or 4 years that I've thought of this, because I debated, should I do this in English or do this in ASL? And I landed on that I'll use my comfort zone of my L1. And then whatever language my guest wants to use, absolutely that adjustment will happen, but know that it will be interpreted accordingly into the other language. Hopefully by the guests themselves and myself, so it looks and feels more natural. So that's where we landed with that. So it is accessible on Apple Podcasts. They have English and transcript options. Spotify has English and ASL, because you can put a little video on Spotify. And YouTube, English, ASL, captions, and transcript. And then at the end of every episode, I ask guests to highlight or talk about a deaf-owned business or deaf organization, just so I can, hopefully, if this gains traction and people listen, then more deaf organizations and businesses will get traffic. And like I said, it'll be on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And I hope to put out some episodes at the beginning just to get stuff out there. And then I probably will do this every 2 weeks. Every week, releasing an episode is just far too much for me. Because I've become a video editor and an accountant and a website designer in designing all of this. So bear with me in this whole journey. I have figured out CEUs. CEUs are offered. This setup is different though. Often workshops or CEUs are behind a paywall. You have to pay to get the content. This is flipped. You get the content free to listen on all these platforms. But if you want me to process CEUs, that costs me money to process those. So you have to pay me to get the post quiz for me to process that. And parkinglotdebrief.com is the place to go to click around, see the episodes, and pay via PayPal. And there's $12 an episode unless the episode is longer than an hour. But you'll just fill out a form, you'll make the payment, I'll send you a post quiz, which is a couple of questions, and then we process your CEUs. And that money will be split up among myself and the show. And I do pay my guests a portion of that CEU money as well. And then I also am taking a portion of it to put into a pot where those funds will accumulate throughout the year. And then I will donate that to a nonprofit deaf organization. So to wrap up, in the end, I have a call to action. I have a what I need from you. Number one is kindness and grace, an open mind. And if this isn't your jam, no worries. You don't got to listen. And I encourage you to set up your own podcast. We need more conversations out there. So I ask for grace and kindness. I also ask from you topics and people. This only works if someone wants to talk with me, because I definitely don't want to sit here and talk by myself. So please email me, parkinglotdebrief@gmail.com. Go to the website, go to Instagram, YouTube, all of that. And let me know who wants to come on the show. What topics do you want to talk about? Who's doing research? What are you passionate about? What fires you up that you like to talk about? So reach out. And my friends, let's make our way to the parking lot and debrief.